Now, we all know that the current British Prime Minister is no fan of the British monarchy. I mean, it's on record, isn't it? There he said he would not, it's not necessarily for him. As I've said many times before, this is the problem with the people that can't stick to the same narrative. This is why he's not successful. He's never honest. You see, the moment that he was offered the knighthood, suddenly, oh no, he's there and he's pallying up now, of course, to His Majesty the King and all that sort of stuff. And then he suddenly got into power by default. But suddenly now His Majesty the King is finding out just how much the current British Prime Minister, along with Rachel from Accounts, otherwise known as the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, really thinks about the British monarchy. As ever, let me explain. Morning, good to see you today. Thank you so much for your time. It's a funny thing, isn't it? I know I've said this many times before. I don't understand these people that accept the award and then so I'm sending it back. I kind of got the Beatles. They were trying to be rebellious at the time, you know. They thought this was ultra cool to mock the monarchy in the 1960s, the heart of the swinging 60s. But this is the problem with Sir Keir Starmer. Whenever he's placed with anything about the truth, suddenly, no, he can't remember, didn't come across his desk, he's got no idea. The man clearly cannot stick to the narrative of the truth. And this seemingly is, of course, part of the problem with the current government, including, as she's now dubbed, Rachel from Accounts, the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves. You see, she's getting herself locked into some kind of battle with His Majesty the King. And it's all to do with the forthcoming and continued refurbishment of the premier residence of the monarch, that is Buckingham Palace. As I've said before, this is an institution. Everybody recognises this building around the world, and rightly so. Every single scene of history has been played out either on the balcony or in the front of those gates, from royal births, of course, to terrible tragedies. But what's happening now is this. Rachel, you see, has decided that even though they're not too keen on carrying on funding the refurbishment, as I say, of Britain's premier royal residence, and you might say, why should we? I totally understand that. The other side of it is, look at the money they're chucking away, all the meanwhile freezing the elderly over here with the winter fuel allowance. All the aid going to Pakistan, etc. Why we're not keeping that if we're so short of money? You get it? But here's where it gets interesting, because now Rachel apparently has decided, get this, that actually, if, of course, King Charles decides to open up more and more of Buckingham Palace once it's fully refurbished, of which apparently he plans to do, then she might ring-fence those profits. Now, the other side of it is that His Majesty the King, well, he'd like the idea to use the profits to keep the refurbishment going and, of course, the maintenance and staff of said Buckingham Palace. Rachel, you see, clearly has no idea how business works. Seemingly she thinks she can just wait for the profits to come in and walk away with them. But what's the plan once, of course, the profits have been ripped apart? This is why the economy is in such a bad way, and more importantly, this is why both she and Sir Keir Starmer have no idea how to govern. It's going to be interesting how this battle plays out, seemingly because at the start of this relationship, well, apparently His Majesty the King offered Sir Keir Starmer a stiff whiskey because apparently he looked like he needed it. He might now need it more than ever upon their next meeting. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.